Gracie, it is so great to have you on the podcast. So great to do this in person.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here.
We're sitting here in the podcast studio of Mission Hills Church in Littleton, Colorado, right in Denver. And this is really the church that you grew up in at a different location. Yep. You were just sharing that with us.
Yeah, full circle moment.
Yeah, well, explain that to us a little bit. Why this is such a full circle moment.
I grew up at Mission Hills Church. I was baptized Mission Hills Church. I was married by the pastor at the time, Mission Hills Church. We dedicated our baby girls here and then ultimately had a vigil of my late husband here at this church. And so this is full circle moment to come back here and to sit in this space and be able to kind of share my story. So I'm really excited.
Well, what's so fascinating about it, and this is the way God works, right? We weren't planning on doing this here at Mission Hills. We just happened to be in town, Kristi and I, which, by the way, Kristi's here with us.
Yes, I was wondering if you introduced me. I was sitting here like, hey, guys, I'm like the third wheel over here.
We just happened to be speaking at a church down the road called Grace Chapel, which you know the pastors really well, and it's part of the way that we got connected, and we were looking for a podcast studio to do this while we're in town.
Yep.
And lo and behold, Mission Hills had one available. So what a neat thing that we get to do this
so cool
here in person at such a special place in your story. Your story's unbelievable. I've gotten bits of pieces of it through the whole thing. I've heard so many people tell me about it. We know a lot of similar, mutual friends and stuff. And so I'm so excited about our listeners hearing this story. I would love, before we do a kind of a deep dive into it, tell us a little bit about you right now. Just, and I know it's hard to say who you are right now, what's going on right now without kind of getting into your story, but just give us a little bit of an idea of what your life is like right now.
Yeah. I'm a mom to two little girls. I have my oldest daughter, Caroline, is 7, and then I have my youngest, Everly, and she is going to be 5 in August. I am so grateful that I can be a stay-at-home mama with them, and then I can take care of them and lead them. That's been such a gift in this season. I'm recently engaged, and so I am planning my wedding, which is so exciting.
So exciting. Yeah.
I am the founder and president of a nonprofit that I've built called the Shelter Foundation, and we offer faith-based community to first responders and their spouses through Bible studies as well as marriage support. And so we have now been operating for 3 years, offering Bible studies for fiancés, girlfriends, and wives of first responders. That's fire, EMS, law enforcement, and federal agents.
Wow.
And we've had at one point up to about 110 first responder families. And that's just word of mouth.
Wow.
I mean, I am running this, taking care of 2 little girls. And then we have been able to scholarship couples to marriage retreats and just really want to see them flourish in their marriage. And so that's been my purpose and my drive. I've never felt more alive and in sync with what God is calling me to do than when I'm running with the Shelter Foundation, and just seeing first responder wives coming to the table and saying, I'm so scared and I'm so anxious and I don't know what to do and I can't sleep and he's not talking to me, and I see him coping with different things that I'm not really proud of, and I don't know who to run to, and I can sit with them and share my story and lead them to the one who can carry it all. And that's been absolutely incredible. Yeah.
Well, this purpose has been driven by, as you know, many of the stories that we highlight has been driven by a pain, a really deep pain in your life.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to kind of take us back and story for us how that pain came into your life and what that was like.
Yeah. I think that I would have to take you back farther than when the actual pain hit. I think as it always does.
Right.
I can share that I was married young at 21 years old, and we were young and in love, and we were planning on just living off of ramen, and it was just this like lightning, couldn't help it. He was planning on going to the corporate world, and I was expecting to have that white picket fence, 6 figures, weekends off. He did that for a few years. We got pregnant with our firstborn, Caroline, and I was 8 weeks pregnant. We had just bought our first home. We were on our way to the American dream. And he came home from work one day and he said, I got to change my career. I got to change it. And this was out of left field. This had not been anything that I had been expecting, never a conversation that had been talked about. And he said, I want to go into law enforcement. And I was like, ooh, like, and I'll be honest with you, I was not walking with the Lord in a strong way at that time. I wasn't. I knew the Lord. I absolutely was going to church and like proclaiming my faith in him. And I had asked him into my life, but I was not walking with him. I had my plan, my agenda. Yeah. I knew what I was going to do. And he just needed to follow along with my plan. Yeah. Yes. And so when my husband, Zach, when he said, I want to go into law enforcement, this was rocking my boat. Yeah. And I wasn't afraid of him dying. That was not what I was afraid of. It was, whoa, like you're going to take away this American dream that I've grown up with, that I'm used to. How dare you? And I remember looking at him. This was back in early 2013. And I remember looking at him and yelling at him, so angry, like, how dare you rock our world right now? I am hormonal. I am 8 weeks pregnant. And he said, I looked at him. And he just sat there and took it. I looked at him and I said, but what happens if you're 29 years old with 2 kids and you're killed? And I remember him looking at me stunned. I remember I was stunned, like speechless. Like, why did that come out of my mouth? That's not like a deep-seated fear. It wasn't like I broke down crying like, okay, this is a deep fear of mine. It was like, what? Where did that come from? Because I can't even acknowledge a fear associated to that. But just kind of let it move on. The Lord changed my heart, and the Lord did a work in my heart and refined me and showed me a lot of the sin of like the greed that I wanted the money. I wanted the 6 figures. I wanted the set schedule, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And it was really me laying down my plans and saying, Lord, your will, not mine. And that was the beginning of God really bringing me to a place where it was this constant submission. And shouldn't that always be my posture? But it's so easily for me to want to rear up and tell him what the plan for my life should be. And so that set Zach on a track where he was going to work 40 hours a week, working in the corporate world on top of putting himself through the law enforcement academy. And he was doing the part-time academy. So instead of it taking like 6 months full-time, it was a year part-time. So he'd work all day and then go to school all night and then school all on the weekends. And I was pregnant with our firstborn. I gave birth to Caroline in November. That was the middle of the year for him. He literally left me in the hospital. I'm like C-section recovering from Caroline. And he's like, I got to go do my physical, like my PT test. Wow. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is the reality. This is first responder world that unfortunately the job oftentimes comes before the family all the time. And he didn't have a job at the time. He was just in the academy. He then fast forward about 1.5 years. Caroline was 1.5 years old when he got his first job. And it was about 15, 20 minutes away from our home. And we were on cloud 9. He had been working multiple jobs at the time in order to make ends meet as we were looking for a law enforcement job. And that's really hard to kind of keep a job in the corporate world when you're really wanting to get into law enforcement. Multiple interviews, multiple testings to get into the first responder world. And so he got into it. We were thrilled. And I saw a change in Zach. And it wasn't like it was this night and day, black and white, like, wow, you have radically changed overnight. It was this subtle, I could just see like the darkness of the first responder world. And he's working graves. Rookies work graves. Right. They work every holiday. He worked every single holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Halloween, Easter, every anniversary, every birthday. And then Zach was a go-getter. He was a driver. He would not stop. He was just like, probably on an Enneagram, he was like an 8-wing 7. Like he was just like all about the party and all about like the have a good time. But at the same time, it was like, let's go. Let's go, go, go. And so when you put a challenge in front of him of like how, like, let's get the bad guys off the streets, he was on it. He was a work dog looking for it. And so that became his purpose and his drive. And I saw what he saw. A lot of first responders do this. They protect their spouse from the darkness that they see, because they're trained through the academy to like have these compartmentalized sections in their brain so that they can like see this trauma, put it aside, and then move on to the next call. And then they go home after going call to call to call to call, and they've seen the works through the night. And then they come home, it's 8 a.m., and I'm bright-eyed, like I slept all night, or maybe I didn't because I was up all night with babies, and I need your help. And he comes in and he's just been run ragged, but he's not sharing or verbalizing it. Most first responders don't, because they got to be a hero. They got to hold it together for their family, for their community. And so I saw that in him. I saw the pull away. I saw the coping skills start to come out that I was not proud of. Things that I was going, what? Like, why are you leaning into this certain aspect that you shouldn't? Like, talk to me, be present. Unfortunately, because of his shift, we weren't going to church at all. He was working all Saturday night. So he'd come home at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning, and he wanted to sleep. He was exhausted. And then when he would have his weekend of supposed to be like 3 days, like 4 days on, 3 days off, that he would be if he had a lot of arrests, he would ultimately have a lot of court cases that he'd have to go to. So then he was going and sitting 5 hours in the court waiting to testify or do different things, and he may not get called up at all for those 4 hours, and I'm sitting at home on what's supposed to be our weekend with the kids, and just constant just divide. And then you add in like the low pay for first responders, and so then we were financially struggling, a lot of tension there. So no quality time, lots of financial struggles, and I just sensed that I knew that God had him where he needed to be. I had never seen like Zach more alive in his profession. Like I saw the purpose and the calling in his life. But at the same time, I felt like I was warring against the enemy every time that he would come in the door, because it was like the enemy was on him with all the darkness that he was experiencing through the night. And I didn't know how to get through. I didn't know how to break that down. And I knew he was trying to be strong for me, and he loved me and the girls so much, and he loved his girls, and he was a very intentional father with Caroline and Evie. He was, but there was this like chasm that I couldn't connect with him. I didn't know what his life was like for the 12 hours that he left our home. And I couldn't relate to that. And so that brought us up to, I guess, he had been in law enforcement for about a year and 3/4. And he was like, I need to get to an agency closer to home so that I don't have to have an hour round trip commute both ways. I can be more present at home. I was really proud of him for that decision. And he ultimately had the goal to become, be on the SWAT team. And so he decided to go from a police department about 30 minutes away to our local sheriff's office, Douglas County Sheriff's Office. And that would mean that he'd have a take-home car. He could be home literally 5 minutes after his shift ended, best case scenario. He could have all of his gear at home, and he could get ready at home and then just go right to shift. It was going to be a really great situation. And we really felt like, okay, like the Lord is bringing a lot of new, fresh life into this. Like what felt really dry and hard, and working a job and going to school and trying to apply and having 2 babies. And you guys are in the trenches when we had a 3-year-old and a newborn at the time. It was just, it was a lot on top of being a first responder family. And I was a single mom for a lot of it, unfortunately. And so he got that job in June of 2017. And we were so excited. Like this was going to be the long haul, right? Like this is career, and this is where he was going to end his career at. We just didn't realize it was going to come so soon. And so that was June of 2017. And I guess a little bit before then, I had a dream. And I woke up I woke up that next morning, and I had said, like, Zach, I had this awful dream. And I don't know like what to do with it. And I'm really not afraid of you dying, because whenever we would talk about law enforcement death, he was very confident. I mean, Zach knew the Lord. He knew the Lord as his Savior. And every time I would be like, but what, are you scared when you like pull your gun out? Are you terrified when someone comes at you with a knife? And he looked at me, Gracie, I just know that God has a plan for my life. And when I am meant to die, that is God's plan for my life. Nothing I can do can stop it.
Wow.
And so I would just reiterate that back to myself anytime that I would text message him while he was on duty and he wouldn't text message me back right away. It was that like constant, like, God has a plan for him. But I constantly did this in the back of my head, but God's not going to take him because he's like a great guy. He's a great dad. Yeah. He's a great police officer. God is going to use him. And so when I had this dream, I woke up and like, Zach, I had this awful dream. I know you said that like if God has a plan for your life, for all of our lives, and that there is a day that we will be born and a day that we will die. And that day has been set. Nothing you can do can change it. But like I had this dream. It was so vivid. It was so real. And in this dream, I was in a hospital hallway. Don't tell me how I knew that. It was just sterile and linoleum floors, white walls. And I was standing there and there was 2 officers walking towards me, full uniform. And they came up to me and they said, Zach's gone. And I woke up. And I said, and I know like their names, and I shared their names. It was 2 officers that Zach knew or friends with. One was with the sheriff's office, and one was a state trooper. And I said, and he was like, well, Gracie, I mean, he was just so in some ways practical. Yeah, like that won't happen. It won't be 2 like police officers from different agencies coming to tell you that I've passed. It would be 2 people from the same agency that I'm with. So like that's irrelevant. That dream doesn't matter. And I remember thinking, but it felt so real. Like it felt so real, and I can't stop thinking about it. And it was vivid. And even after Zach got his job with Douglas County Sheriff's Office, I remember thinking that because one of the officers in my dream was with Douglas County Sheriff's Office. And so I remember thinking like, no, certainly that won't happen. And so I guess then that brings us up to New Year's Eve, 2017. And at the time, our oldest had just celebrated her 4th birthday, and our youngest was 16 months old. So we had a 4-year-old, a 16-month-old. I remember having just like a weird feeling all day on December 30th. Like, am I getting a stomach bug or like what's going on? It didn't feel right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And so Zach offered to go get a pizza for dinner for us because I was like, I don't know if I'm not feeling well, I don't want to make dinner for us. And I just remember Zach was very unlike himself that night in the very best way possible. It was as if God's grace was walking with him through that evening. There was no stress, there was no tension. He was the best version of himself that night. Hands-on with both the girls before he was going to go to work. Tender and sweet with me. Went and filled up my car with gas. Got a pizza for us for dinner. It was going to be his last night at work, and we were finally going to have New Year's Eve together. He had worked every New Year's Eve before that. So he was going to go to work on the 30th, and he was going to come home on the 31st, and we were going to spend New Year's Eve together with our family that night. And we're excited. I deep cleaned the house from Christmas to New Year's Eve. Like we're starting off 2018, and leading up to 2018, Zach and I kept saying, something big's going to happen. Like, can't you feel like something big's going to happen? It just, I don't know what it is, but there was like this excitement brewing that we just had this palpable energy that neither of us could. It wasn't like an oppression. It wasn't this like something bad is going to happen. Just felt like something big. And Zach even kept saying that over and over again to me and his coworkers. Something bad. He was saying something bad is about to happen in Douglas County. And I kept saying something big is going to happen. We just didn't know we'd be the epicenter of it.
Yeah. Wow.
So he went to work on December 30th. We got the girls tucked in bed. He got his uniform on. Like we always did. I watched him get his uniform on, high and tight. Everything was very like buffed and ready to go. And I gave him his like meal because he ate lunch at 4 a.m. and gave him his meal and his water bottle and watched him walk out the garage door. The patrol car was parked on the driveway, and gave him a kiss and said, "I'll see you later." He walked out the garage door, and I stood there as I always did and watched him drive off. And went and binged some Netflix and thought, this is going to be awesome. We're going to have our like family time together. And what a sweet night that we had just had. And I then went to sleep a little bit later than I normally did. But I think that's worth noting because I went and checked on each of the girls as I always did before I went to bed. And I kept having this reoccurring thought, like, what happens if Zach dies? And I remember thinking, like, why am I thinking that? Like, why would I think of that? And I kept pushing it aside. Like, I don't need to think about that, because I was not afraid of Zach dying. That was nothing that I'd never lost sleep over it. Anytime that thought would come into my mind, it was constantly like, God has a plan for him. He has a plan for me. And so I got in bed and I felt the deepest sleep coming over me. And I remember thinking right before I went to bed, it was as if the Lord whispered in my ear. I didn't realize it as this at the time. But looking back, I truly believe it was as if the Lord whispered in my ear and said, like, what happens if Zach dies? And I remember thinking very clearly, we'll be okay. God's going to take care of us. And I fell into the deepest sleep I've ever had in my life. Wow. The kind of sleep that you wake up at 8 a.m. and you're like, did I move at all night? Like, did that happen? I was then awoken at 7:55 a.m. by a pounding on the door from a sergeant and a chaplain on December 31st, 2017. My babies were still asleep. My 4-year-old and my 16-month-old were still asleep at 16 months old. I was still asleep, 7:55 a.m. And so it was just a blur. I jumped up out of bed, opened the blinds, and saw 2 dark cars parked in front of my house. And just it wasn't this like gentle knock. It was a pounding on the siding of the door. And it just that constant like, oh my God, it's happening. Yeah. It is happening. But the Lord was so gracious to like buffer me at that time, that it wasn't this like stomach drop, I can't move, but he just carried me through it. And so I remember kind of like trying to like, I'm in my pajamas, like I need my robe, and turn off the house alarm and run down the stairs and open the door. And my 4-year-old came out of her room like, Mommy, what's happening? And I remember thinking, it's just like mama instinct, like go back into your room. Like I just knew whatever it was, she couldn't hear it or see it. Yeah. And I went downstairs and saw 2 men I had never met in my life before. I saw that one was full uniform, Douglas County Sheriff's Office, and one was more in like chaplain attire. And didn't know that he was a chaplain, just thought like maybe he's peer support or something like that. Brought them in, and they're like, can we come in? Zach's been involved in an officer-involved shooting. There's multiple officers that have been hurt. We need you to basically get ready, and we need to take you to the hospital. And I'm not one to just take that and let that like, okay, sure, I'll go grab my purse. Let's go. It's like, no, you're going to tell me what happened. And we're going to go from there. And that's when they saw my 4-year-old come out of her bedroom. And it was like, oh, you have children. I'm like, I have a baby in a crib upstairs. And so that's when I said, like, what happened to him? Like, is he in surgery? What happened? And I don't think they had planned on telling me that. I think it planned on, like, let's take you to the hospital. Let's let the doctors and surgeons let you know what has happened to him. And they said, I'm so sorry, Zach's gone. And I just kind of, we had, like, a living room right off the front door with a coffee table. And I just kind of, like, sunk down onto the coffee table in complete shock and disbelief. And I remember thinking, like, oh, my gosh, it's happened. It's as if I've been here before.
Right. Wow.
It's as if like the Lord had taken me here and then taken me back. And I just felt like, and I know this sounds so crazy, but it was his like overwhelming grace at the moment that it just like held me up. And Caroline, unfortunately, Mommy, Daddy died. And I remember just like, what do you say? Yeah. Like your little life has changed forever. But I just knew that God was with us in the moment. And so I had to make the call to my family and let them know that Zach had died. And then traditionally, the law enforcement local to like his family would go and alert them by knocking on their door. And they unfortunately were out of town during that time. So we didn't have an exact address location that they could go to. And so I made the call to them as well and let them know that their son had passed. And everything started to just kind of come down.
You made that call.
So I made that call. I told both sets of our parents that he had passed. And he was 29 years old when he was shot and killed. He was trying to assist a man who was just struggling and decided to do a police ambush. And so Zach was the only officer killed at the time. There was 4 or 5 officers that were in there. Multiple were injured. They are heroes, absolute heroes. But Zach was the one that took the heat of all the gunfire, and he died on scene. And so I became a widow at 29 years old. they, after you've made all the phone calls and it's like, hurry, like we got to go. I mean, the media and the news was swarming, and I didn't realize the magnitude that I was about to step into at this time. I was not aware of how big law enforcement funerals are. Ironically, Zach and I had watched a documentary on first responder funerals Christmas Eve.
Wow.
A week before, like we had sat down and watched a documentary on like law enforcement funerals. Little did I know I'd be living that out a week later. And so they, grabbed some clothes, and my parents came over and stayed with, my dad went with me, my mom stayed with the girls, and we ran lights and sirens to the hospital where Zach's body was. Wow. And I sat there in the back seat. I didn't want to be in the front seat. I don't know why at the time, but I remember sitting there in disbelief. Like, I called my biblical counselor as we were driving, my mentor. I love her. And I called her and she answered. And I said, I need you. Like, I need you now. And this hasn't hit the news. Like, the news was all over it. Helicopters were swarming the apartment complex where Zach had been killed. But they weren't releasing his name because his family needed to know. And so we were, myself, his family, my family, were doing everything we could to alert all of our family members before it would hit the media. And I could just, over and over again, I heard this repeating in my head, in my ear, in the middle of my deepest fear, I'll find you here. And I remember being like, where is that from? Like, I don't know where that's coming from. That's not a scripture verse that I can pinpoint. And it just over and over again. And so I get to the hospital, and of course they're like ushering me out of the chaplain car really fast and taking me in through the ER, which they had shut down the ER because of an active shooting. So I'm walking through this sea, just lined blue police officers on the walls, and they're just crying. They're sobbing, and they're there as support from every agency that you could ever think of. And that is the Blue family. Like, they support each other and they back each other up. They put their lives on the line for each other. And they may not have all known Zach, but he was their brother to them. He was one of them. And so I'm walking down in complete shock of what's happening. And they share with me that Zach had passed, that his body was there, that I could go see. And so I go in with my dad and just kind of like sat down in a chair next to the hospital bed, and over that kept playing. In the middle of my deepest fear, I'll find you here. In the middle of my deepest fear, I'll find you here. And at the time, I was carrying my wallet and my phone because I was a diaper bag mom at the time. And I wasn't going to bring my diaper bag without my babies. So I just grabbed my wallet out of it. And one of the victims advocate had asked, like, can I hold that for you while you go in there? And it was like a triage in the ER. It's not like I had a room with walls. it was like curtains around a gurney. And so anyone could have heard what was being said in there, what was happening in that room. And so I'm sitting in there with nothing, but this overwhelming, power came over me of, find out, type that into Google. Who thinks that? Who is recently widowed, 45 minutes into learning that your husband has been, murdered? Yeah. And I want to Google this phrase that's going through my head. Wow. And so I looked over at my dad. I said, can I have your phone? I want to Google a song. I think it's a song. He looked at me like, are you crazy? What? Where is this coming from? Right. I was like, I have to find this out. And so he handed me his phone, and I said, I got to find it. And so I typed it in, here in the middle of my deepest fear. And the song Find You Here by Ellie Holcomb started playing. And I just want to read some of the lyrics because it's truly a gift from the Lord, that I believe that God used Ellie Holcomb's song to bless me in that moment and to reassure me that he was going to be there every step of the way. Wow. And so it starts off, it says, it's not the news that any of us hoped that we would hear. It's not the road we would have chosen, no. The only thing that we can see is darkness up ahead, but you're asking us to lay our worry down and sing a song instead. And I didn't know I'd find you here in the middle of my deepest fear, but you were drawing near, you were overwhelming me with peace. So I lift my voice and sing, you're gonna carry us through everything. You were drawing near, you're overwhelming all my fears with peace. And it goes down, and then it says, here in the middle of the lonely night, here in the middle of losing fight, you're here in the middle of the deep regret, here when the healing hasn't happened yet, here in the middle of the desert place, here in the middle when I cannot see your face, here in the middle with your outstretched arms, you can see my pain and it breaks your heart. Wow. And the song goes on, but I just knew that that was a gift. That was the Lord speaking to me. And I think that is, he is with the brokenhearted.
Yeah, right.
He is so near to the brokenhearted. And that began my journey as a 29-year-old widow with 2 little girls.
Wow.
In the public eye. It hit local news, national news. We received correspondence from the president, tweeted by the president. It was, there's since gone on to have documentaries done about December 31st and Zach's death, because it really brings in the mental health perspective with gun violence. And so just like you put a young family on New Year's Eve with mental health and gun violence, and you're going to get an explosion.
Right.
The outpouring from the community was absolutely unreal and overwhelming. But I went from Gracie Parrish, the mama who was taking a 4-year-old to her first day of preschool and making a box of macaroni and deep cleaning my house for fun before New Year's, to now I became like a name that people recognize, but not for something that I really wanted.
For your brokenness.
Yeah, known for my brokenness, known for my loss. They know Zach's killer's name. They know his face because that was posted all over the media.
Right.
Unfortunately, Zach's death was live streamed while it was happening.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was the killer's intention, is that he ambushed it as well as set up cameras so that he could live stream the whole event while it was happening. And while the sheriff's office is incredible and they've taken it down anytime they can, it's up there. He was not a fan of first responders and law enforcement, and he was going to make that very clear. And so it was, my life went from like quiet little cul-de-sac street to everyone knew my name. My address was public, like most of our addresses are. I was receiving mail and correspondence from around the world, gifts, flowers, jewelry. I mean, anything you could think of. My living room, which was a decent size, suddenly became filled with handmade gifts and cards and gift cards and money. And I'm so grateful for those just army of people that didn't know me or my girls, but that felt called to take care of us. My church family was absolutely incredible, stepped in and cared for me. I'm so grateful that I have my immediate family here local, that they could really love on me and hold my arms up. That chaplain who delivered the news of Zach's death is one of like a closest like mentor in my life now with his wife. And so God carried me every step of the way. It's easy for me to share like these are all the wonderful things that God has done, but there have been so many moments of like face first in the carpet, like beating my hand against the carpet, getting the girls to bed and going into the closet, shutting the door and screaming into a pillow because of the deep anger that like, this is not what I wanted. And I am a planner. I am a list maker. I am color coded. I like to have my plan. And God, I think, knew that I would be the girl, in his sovereignty, that I could like lean in with him in that. And I hate the pain that marks my story. I hate it. I hate it for my girls. I can handle pain for myself, but watching my girls grieve, that wrecks me. It absolutely wrecks me. And so I think that's kind of, I think that's where we are. I eventually went on to build the Shelter Foundation, and it's like a deep calling in that. But
when I like hearing your story, it just takes me a second to even
takes your breath away.
Just know even what you even had to step in through. Like when you're on the other side of pain and all the work you've had to do with your children and seeing like the wreckage it causes, and it's like carnage in a way.
Yes.
And you can say the whole time, like you can see that God was carrying you, and even while carrying, you're still bloodied and wounded.
Yes.
And so I think my biggest question for you, because I know like he was making himself known that whole entire time, but like, what were some of the wrestling that you had with God? Because I even think about your story. I'm like, you didn't even want him to become a law enforcement, you know, in that field. Like, you wanted your playing corporate world and everything, and you sacrificed so much. You had so many nights where you even questioned, like, is he going to come back? I think of all the families, all the wives who are always questioning if their husbands will come back to them and their kids. And like, you had to go through all of that to then, now here's this life kind of robbed from you.
Stolen. It felt like it had been stolen from me. I hated that Zach would not be able to watch his girls walk. He wouldn't walk them down the aisle. I hated he wouldn't be even able to hear Evie be verbal. She wasn't even verbal yet. I mean, he couldn't even see Caroline write her name or gosh, I was so angry and I was so devastated. The wrestling for me, gosh, it was the deepest wrestling for me that came was, is God good? Is he good to me? Is he good to, I knew he was good to, like, he was taking care of me, right? Like, he had financially provided me, like, thank you for the gift cards, the support. I could see the tangible provision that God had done. But, like, are you good to my heart and my soul, Lord? Like, are you good to me? And can I trust you? Because I trusted you with my husband and with my girls, and look what has happened. Like, you have allowed the enemy to come in and destroy it, obliterate it. This isn't just like some pieces I can glue back together and see like a semi-formed life. Like, this is dust. There is no going back to this. And it's just dry, brittle, barren land that I have no clue how you're going to do anything with this. And I could have given you my 10-year plan of what we were going to do as a married couple and as a family, but now I had nothing. Like, I was a stay-at-home mom. Do I go back to work? And so that wrestling of, is God good? That was the deep fear, the deep lie that the enemy had woven and like spoken into my life over and over again. God's not good to you. He's just good to everyone else. God's going to redeem it for everyone else, but not you. You're going to sit in this brokenness. Like, does God really love you, Gracie? He would allow your husband at 29 years old, after 8.5 years of marriage, to be murdered and your little girls to be fatherless. And you're out in the public eye. I had experienced stalkers after Zach died. So I was dealing with the grief of Zach's loss, mothering 2 little babies in the public eye. And now suddenly, over an 8-month time period after Zach died, I had 3 individuals completely unrelated making it very clear they knew where I lived and that they didn't have good intentions. And I eventually had to move and go into an address protection program in order to protect myself and the girls from that. And I had one of those stalkers in prison for 2 years on felony charges. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, are you good? Like, can I trust you? Because I didn't want this life of a first responder, yet you put it in here. I didn't want to be a single parent, yet you gave it to me, not just as a widow, but as a first responder parent. First responder spouses are single parents so much of the time. They have to be so independent, so strong, yet also so tender, because they have to be so present for their husband and their children and their own emotional needs. And so I was just, are you good? And I remember getting the girls to bed and having that like lump in my throat of like, I am going to lose it. Like, I am going to ugly cry all over them. But when I would cry, they would cry. So I was trying to keep it together. I got them to bed, and I remember texting one of my mentors and being like, I need you, like 15 minutes. Can I call you? And I got the girls to bed, and I sat on the couch and I called her. And when she picked up the phone, she was like, hey, Gracie. And I just started sobbing. I was like, I don't know if God is good for me. I don't know if he can redeem this. I don't know if he loves me enough to redeem this, to make this better. And I don't know what to do with that. Because I don't really want to be, like, if this is who God is, if this is what he allows into my life. And so And I remember her just immediately starting to like speak life over me in scripture and praying over me of like the enemy was trying to do anything he could. Like he saw this grieving woman that was not on the brink of like walking away from the Lord, but like I was questioning God. Like, is your character true? Like, is what I learned in VBS and Sunday school and years of sitting in the church pew, like, is that going to stand right now? Because this is where like faith was going to come into it. Like I had to hold on to what I could not see and I had to run with it, believing that God was so good and not just in provision for me, because for me, it felt like blood money.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't want God to be this like gangbanger, like just shelling out money left and right. Like, you're hurting, Gracie? Here's some more money. Oh, your babies are hurting? Here's some gift cards. Oh, you've got a stalker? Here's a house you can move into. Like, no, Lord, like fix my heart. Like heal my heart, heal the brokenness in my family. My babies are crying out for a daddy. I'm lonely, I'm aching. And I knew that like a man wasn't going to come and fix any of this. But like you took this away. Like, where are we going from here? And I think for the first year was shock, just complete shock. The second year was anger. I was so angry at God.
Wow.
So angry. On the outside, I was speaking of God's goodness and his love and his care. I had already established the foundation. Like God is so creative. He had asked me to establish the foundation 6 months into Zach's loss when I was full like trauma and shock. And then that first year I was feeling like I was feeling like God's buffering me and how he was so close to the brokenhearted. I could give you lists of how he was so faithful to me, but I needed to go through that like dark wrestling. That dark
we all do. There's always that bottom out after the shock. There's always a bottom out.
Ooh, it's a dark bottom. It's a dark bottom. I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't prepared for the dark bottom that I would hit. I was kind of riding this high of support and God's got me and look how he's providing for me and he's going to take care of this. And then the support goes away after the first year. And the gift cards stopped coming and the cards stopped coming and the meals stopped getting dropped off. And understandably.
They kind of forget. Their life moves on. And you're still in the thick.
Everyone had moved forward and I was still putting babies to bed by myself. I was celebrating their birthdays alone, their milestones, watching them write their name and answering the questions of why do they have a daddy at soccer and I don't? Why did a man want to kill my daddy? How many times did it take to kill my daddy? I mean, the questions that a 5-year-old has, they're very intelligent, they're very bright, and they want to know. And buffering that and answering those questions, those were moments of like deep, deep pain. I don't think that I ever stopped going to the closet and kind of pounding my fist on the carpet. It was like 2.5 years of fist pounding and screaming into the pillow. And it went from probably more of an anger at God, an anger at Zach, to an anger at my life, anger at the situation. God did sweetly bring me through that moment of like, is God good? Is he trustworthy? And it wasn't through this like powerful, momentous, like enlightening moment. It was just over the course of like my heart was hardened for that second year. I was just angry and I doubted him 100%. You could ask all my friends and I thought, he doesn't care about me. He's not going to redeem this. He's not going to bring another dad for my girls. He's not going to bring love into my life again. I'm going to be a sad widow for the rest of my life. And I'm just going to pour out my life as a first responder widow to all of these first responder wives. And I said multiple times to close people in my life, I'm afraid that God is letting me be the sacrificial lamb.
Oh, wow.
And that was where they were like, this is another like lie that the enemy has woven into your heart. And man, that surgery that has to take place when you have to take out the lies of the enemy and to really get deep down in there. I mean, that was deep, deep lie that God was allowing me to be a sacrificial lamb to benefit and bless all these other families, but that I would continue to sit in this desolation, in this dark, dry place with my girls. Not just me, but that my girls would feel it too.
Wow. Where did he begin to kind of crack the door open on that?
Ooh. I think the Lord brought about a level of contentment in me, because once I went through, I found quickly after Zach died, I realized that my mentor, my sweet biblical counselor, as well as my amazing chaplain, it wasn't going to cut it. I needed intense therapy. And so I went and found the most incredible Christian therapist who we did EMDR together. I love EMDR. That radically changed healing for me. And worked through that for 2.5 years weekly, seeing her. And so weekly I would sit with her and I would just open up my fears that I wouldn't share with anyone else, and share I am so terrified that I am the sacrificial lamb, that God is not good for me. And I remember at one point realizing that after I was able to acknowledge that the Lord, that is not the Lord's character. He is not, he's not a shepherd that's going to slaughter his sheep. He leaves the 99 for one. He is not going to watch his sheep be slaughtered as a sacrifice. There was the ultimate sacrifice. That's right. And that's not me. That was already paid on the cross. Right. And when I was able to acknowledge that and to truly feel the overwhelming love of the Savior for me, it was as if those chains that the enemy had on me that was prohibiting me from experiencing his love broke. And it was a dam in that moment that I felt okay, you are, but we had groundwork to now lay. We had lots of, the Lord and I needed to go through a lot more time together and build that foundation of this is who he said. He is who he says he is. Yes. I can trust him. He loves me. He cares for me. I am enough for him. That he is my provider, and he's my husband, and he is the father to my little girls, and he will take care of me, and he will stand in front of me. He will not watch someone come after me and step aside, because I had seen a stranger to my husband kill him, and then I had 3 strangers trying to come after me. So I felt so vulnerable, so afraid. The covering of my husband was gone. That protectiveness was gone from me. So I felt vulnerable as a single mom taking care of my 2 little girls. But then to feel these other three stalkers coming at me. I was Lord, where are you? When will you stand in front of me? You didn't stand in front of my husband dying. You didn't stand in front of these 3 stalkers coming at me. And so the Lord and I had to do this, we had to wrestle through that. And so as soon as those chains were broken, in the sense that his love was pure and his love was incredible for me, that he would send his son to die on the cross for my sins, that I was not the sacrificial lamb. We then needed to go through all right, Gracie, what about the stalkers? Where was I then? What about Zach? Where was I then? What about moving into your new home and the Utters Protection Program and your little girls when they found out that Zach was dead? Where was I then? And God was so sweet to, in time in prayer or in time in counseling, to show me where he was in those moments. He was standing at the bottom of the stairs when I ran down the stairs with an outstretched hand. He was standing right next to Zach when he died. He was not present. He was not gone. He wasn't hands tied in the corner watching it all happen. He was holding Zach. He was right there with him. He was protecting my home when the stalkers were coming. He was giving me the wisdom and the grace to go, now you move. Now you go here. And I was able to kind of look back with God and go, okay, in the moment I didn't see you there, but now I do. And that was a dark year of not feeling his presence. After feeling his presence so strongly in 2018, 2019 is a year I will never, I'd rather do 2020 all over again than do 2019. Because that was a really dark season. And so I think that I also sensed through seeing where was God through each of those moments, that I felt God was also able to show me that I was wrestling and pushing against his plan for my life. I don't want to be a widow. I don't want to be a single mom. Fix it, change it, make it change. Make me a wife again. Make my girls have a daddy again. Take it all away. I don't want to do this. fix the brokenness and let's move on. And I felt like the Lord was like, no, I need you to sit in this with me for a minute. Like, I need you to find me here. Wow. I need you to see that, like, I am your provider and your husband. I am the girl's daddy. And, like, are you willing to let me lead you? Like, you don't lead me, Gracie. It goes the opposite way around. I lead you. And that is where I really, I think there was breakthrough in the moment of recognizing that I was not the sacrificial lamb. Yeah. There was also another huge breakthrough in realizing I got to lay my plans down again. Because I had gone to the Lord beforehand and been like, these are my plans. This is what we're going to do. But then what I didn't realize is that ultimately I was kind of doing the same thing. I was throwing a fit.
Right.
I was pitching the biggest fit with, I don't want to be a widow. I don't want to be a single mom. And so I'm angry at you.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit here and pout because this is not what I wanted. This is not good. Look at all my friends. Yeah. I live in a pretty like upper white middle class community where everyone's married, 3 kids, 2 dogs, white picket fence. I have not a single friend local that had experienced being a widow at the time. Yeah. No young loss, not even divorce. Wow. I was like, why me? Like, why me? I was angry. This isn't what I wanted. You picked the wrong girl and I'm done. I'm pitching a fit. And so when God really brought that to my attention, like, you got to lay this down. You got to give it up. And what about my plan? Like, are you willing to say, like, here I am, send me? Yeah. Which is what a lot of law enforcement officers will have tattooed on their bodies because that is their mantra in some way. Like, here I am, send me. I'll go into the darkness. But it was now coming back around, like, am I willing to say, like, here I am, Lord, send me. Yeah. Whatever you have for me, even if it's nothing that I want. I didn't want law enforcement. I didn't want to be a widow. I didn't want to be a single mom. Yeah. But okay, like, into this unknown future, whatever you want. And I think when I laid that down, I experienced a lot of peace. It didn't mean that I didn't pick it back up the very next morning and be like, wait, hold on, I don't really like this anymore. But he was so gracious to have put people in front of me and to like cheer me on and to push me to keep going. And just in those God winks that only he can do, they'll like drop a little moment. I don't like I'd go through the drive-thru of Chick-fil-A exhausted with my girls, single mom, like, okay. And then he would, God would buy my dinner for me. I'd pull up and they'd be like, it's paid for. Now, the person they had no clue who I was, my story. It could have been one of those like pay it forward type movement things. But at that point, I had recognized, like, girls, this is God being your daddy. Yeah, he is buying your dinner. This is God as my husband buying dinner for his tired bride. And so here we are. And those were the little like nuggets that kept me going of like, God, you see me. You are my protector. Because as soon as the enemy was able to get his hands off of me, that I was not the sacrificial lamb. And that I did have an incredibly adoring husband that was going to stand in front of me and provide for me and buy me a meal and take care of me at night and play that song on the radio just when I needed it. Like, that was God.
And his goodness.
So good. Yeah. And I was able to, in those moments, start to pinpoint it. And that's continued to kind of like take me from that darkness and that wrestling of, are you good? To like leaning in and continually also casting out the enemy and continually calling up those girlfriends that could speak truth to me and be straight shooters and that wouldn't hold back. If I were to be like, I'm kind of feeling this and frustrated, and they'd be like, hold up, lie from the pit of hell, cast it out. Let's talk about it. And I think, gosh, I'm grateful for those friendships because I don't know where I'd be. They need to hold my arms up.
Well, I think about when you're talking about, is God good? I think that's the question that most people, when they go through some pain, that's the question that they ask. And you've gone through what we would seem as extreme pain that most people would not have had experienced. And to think about that question, it's funny, the lens that you look at God through, it changes every single season. And to know that you had to cast aside that you're not the sacrificial lamb, you were looking through the lens of that. And so you'd read his word or you pray to him through that lens. And so it was neat because I always share the story with people about in God's word when he talks about the blind man that was outside the gates that was begging. And over 30 years he's been blind and he's been begging. And when Jesus came and healed him, I was not excited that Jesus healed him. because it said, hey, why were you healed? And he goes, I don't know, but I was blind, but now I can see. And this was for God's glory.
Yes.
And I saw God through the lens of a narcissistic puppet master.
Mm-hmm.
So I read that, like, you don't have his best interest in mind. You just wanted to heal him so everyone else could see that you're so glorious. Good for you, God. And that's, but I would go out and I would say all the goodness of God and teach, tell everybody about how amazing God is. And I'm a Christian. But deep down, I did not believe he was good until we had Johnny Erickson Tada on the podcast. And she, at 16 years old, she was paralyzed in a neck injury. And so she's been in this wheelchair for over 50 years, had cancer twice. And Davey asked her, like, I would never want this story. I would never ask for this story to happen to me, but I wouldn't take it back. Would you say that about your wheelchair? And what she said was this, like, God is more concerned about the well-being of my soul than the well-being of my body. So I'll take the chair.
Yes.
And so when I think about this, God was so concerned for that blind man. He knew that the only way his soul would be in eternity with him is if he was blind for those over 30 years. So the same in my life. I had trauma for over 30 years. In the same way, he knew I needed that in a way. So I could be in eternity with him because he loves us so much. He wants nobody to perish because he's good and he's gracious. And so I think about that with your story, and I'm like, he's just trying to remove all that stuff from you, have you surrender, and then go to him and say, like, you are good, but you also love me.
Yes.
And to be in surrender like that.
Yes.
I would think what really strikes me is this, you were continually trying to lead God by the hand, right? And then the moment that you said, no, I'm going to let you lead me by the hand, is when he was able to show you and demonstrate to you his goodness, right? You're like trying to manufacture this, I need you to tell me you're good. I need you to, and then he's like, daughter.
Yeah.
Let me just show you.
Yeah.
Take me by the hand.
Yeah.
Right. And let me lead you
Yes.
here. And that's something you've said, Chris. With your healing journey too, that you had to let God take you by the hand and lead you.
I mean, when
into
you're a strong, independent woman, you're like, I can do anything by myself. Even if I have to white knuckle, I'm going to bulldoze, get through it. We're going to figure it out. And so I would say, like, this is how I'm going to heal, Lord. Like, this is the way, because I can handle this way.
You had a list.
Yes.
Oh,
Right,
I had a
Gracie?
checkbox. And in many ways, I even, and I'm sure there's some other people who have gone through pain could tell me, because I in many ways walked into counseling like, give me the checklist of what I need to check off to be healed.
Wow.
Yep. And I'll fix it. I'll do it. It's so easy. It's so simple.
Give me the 4-step plan.
Yeah.
Yep.
I got this. We can do this. And I remember at one point my counselor looking at me and being like, you do realize I don't have a checklist
There's
in front
no
of
plan.
me. There's no plan. There's no ultimate end to healing except in Christ.
Yeah.
Yes.
That you will wrestle through this pain.
Right.
You may experience redemption in particular ways, not just through remarriage, but in particular ways here on this earth. But the ultimate redemption, the ultimate healing is when we step foot into eternity.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's leaning into the Lord through this time and believing that he has so much more for you. That like, just as Zach said, when God's plan for my life is done, that is when he will take me. Like he had accomplished his work through Zach. Yeah. And on December 31st, before the beginning of time, that was the day that he would go. Yeah. And there was a awakening kind of like, all right, my plans, like God's plan for me isn't done. My plan is done.
That's it. Wow.
My plan is done. God's plan for me is not done. It's not the plan that I wanted. I have no clue what's coming. I'm terrified.
Yeah.
I don't like the unknown. I don't like surprises. I want to know what's coming. I'm the girl that reads, I'm flipped to the end of the novel because I can't handle the suspense. Show me what's going to happen at the end. I need to know. But I couldn't do that with my life.
Yeah.
And so it really stretched my trust in him, my surrender to him. But those were some, like, you had said that, like, would she take away the pain? And I was asked that too. Like, if you could go back, if you could stop Zach from going to work on the 31st, would you? Like, knowing what you know now, would you? And of course, like, my physical body for my girls goes like, I want to stop it because I want my girls to experience this pain. But knowing the Lord now, I did not know him in that way before Zach died, but knowing the Lord now and trusting him now in such a deep, more like genuine, raw way where I'm like, I know I can trust you with like to provide manna for me every day. Yep. I'm like, I wouldn't change it because I can trust his plan for my life.
Yes.
And that this is the ultimate best plan for my life. Like this is God's best for me. And I wouldn't change it. I know Zach knows the Lord in a deeper way right now. Yep. I know the Lord in a deeper way. And because I know the Lord in a deeper way, I pray that my girls will be able to like catch that in a deeper way, in a more real way. And so I wouldn't change it. Yeah. I wouldn't change it at all because I didn't know God as my husband before Zach died. Yeah. But now he is my ultimate husband. And I would never trade that for the world.
And only someone who has walked through the depths of that kind of pain with the Lord and the Lord has walked them hand in hand through that healing can say that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make, there's going to be people who listen to this right now and they're going to be like, what? I don't understand. But I would 100% echo everything that Gracie just said. You wouldn't have asked for this.
Never.
Not in a million years. Wouldn't have asked for this.
Nope.
You also wouldn't trade it for the world.
No, I wouldn't.
Because there's a depth of knowing, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Elizabeth Elliot wrote this in The Path of Loneliness. She wrote, what you gain in relationship to the giver far outweighs the loss of the gift. It's one of those paradoxes that cannot be understood unless you've walked it.
Yep.
But it is a sweet, sweet path when you've walked it.
Yes,
and there's a deep richness of your communion with Christ because of this deep pain.
Yep.
And so, that's to encourage all of us. Say, if you're in the midst of this pain right now, lean in. Stop trying to take God by the hand and lead him where you want him to go. You let him take you by the hand. He'll lead you into healing, and he'll lead you into this deep, rich relationship. And he's led you in some, your future is continuing to be written, and he's led you into this really, like you said, a part of your redemption. This is not your redemption.
No.
This is not your redemption.
No.
Please don't. No.
No.
This is a part, an aspect of this massive redemption story that God is writing in your life.
Yes.
But talk to us a little bit about what you're looking forward to in 35 days. Is that right?
Yes, 35 days, I believe. Just so God. Yeah. It was last fall that I was I was still in a pretty dark season. Not dark in the sense like I didn't have the Lord with me, but I wasn't seeing the sun come up.
Yeah.
I was kind of like,
I believe that's the first time you and I chatted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I remember thinking like, I'll do this podcast, but I don't know, Lord, where you're taking me. Like, am I going to be stepping away from the first responder lifestyle? It was getting hard, going and standing in front of 35 first responder wives. And I'm like, I would do anything to hear that Kevlar being taken off at midnight. I would do anything to pick up a uniform off the floor. Yeah. Do anything to make a lunch for you to eat at 4 a.m. again. Like, I would do anything to have a parent.
I imagine that's so tough. You're hearing them kind of complain and bring it, and you're like, I want to shake
so
you and
hard.
say, no.
Like, girl, Lee, just be so grateful for the gift of marriage. Like, this is a gift. This is this like beautiful offering from the Lord for you. Like, do not waste this. Do not waste it. And so I was wanting to walk away. I'll be honest. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to walk away from the foundation. I got 2 little girls that need me. I have an empty resume. I need to go get a job. I need to go take care of them. I need to step into being like, I'm your provider, girls. Like, the Lord is right there with us. But like, Lord, where do you want me to go? And so it was last fall. I reached out to the board of the foundation and I said, we need to pray. We need to pray. And they were like, yeah, let's pray and let's fast. Let's pray and fast for clarity on the foundation. And I've been honest with them, like, I don't know where this is going because I'm burning out. Like, I am, because law enforcement has changed over the last 3 years. Yeah. It is not the same culture that it was in 2017 when I was a first responder wife. And so I was very much feeling like, I don't know if I feel called. Like, I understand what it's like to have your husband murdered by gunfire, but not under these conditions, not under this constant threat. And so we prayed, and I remember telling my closest girlfriend, like, I'm going to pray, but I'm going to give God time to be God. So we'll make I'll make my decision May of 2021. That's when I'll make my plans. Like, we'll pray through the fall, but then I'll make my plans in May. of what I'm going to do. Let's finish out the academic calendar year of Bible study. I can't just like shut it down in the middle of the year, and let's see what happens. And I told one of my girlfriends, like, told the board, like, pray for clarity. But in the middle of it, my deepest heart, I had this like little mustard seed of faith. God, if you want me to stay in the foundation, like, so this is when I try to take the plan back again, right? Yeah. Like, I was like, I'm going to give you an ultimatum, God. This is what we're going to do. Here's my list. Yeah. You want me to stay in the foundation, bring me a first responder husband, requalify me. And a part of me was like, what am I saying? Like, this is awful.
Why back in that lifestyle?
Yes. Do I want to go back into this? But I felt so alive in the foundation, so much like in his walking with the Lord, in his purpose for me when I would be organizing and doing Bible studies. Administration is like one of my spiritual giftings. I can do organization up the yin yang. I loved it, but my emotions and my heart was just breaking every time I was doing it. And so it was with a little bit of fear that I would pray that, but also with a little bit of like, I challenge you, God. I challenge you. And I remember my girlfriend being like, all right, let's pray for it. And I remember like, he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. It's not going to happen. It's absolutely ridiculous prayer. And I think I felt safe praying it because I felt like it was so unattainable. Yes. It would not happen. I mean, we're in the middle of 2020. Yeah. How do you meet anyone in 2020? Right. And it would be a few weeks after we prayed that a girlfriend, another widow, would be like, hey, I want to connect you with one of my friends. I think you guys would be a really great match. He's a firefighter. I was like, oh, well, okay. If he loved, and honestly, I didn't really put two and two together. Right. It was kind of like, we'll see. I mean, there had been a few guys that had made an interest but never called or went out on a date. It didn't really go anywhere. And it was just kind of like, I'm kind of like, God is my husband. I got my plan. Like, God's either going to like put this guy in front of me and we're done. But I was really set, like 90%, we're going to shut this down. We're going to move on. Yeah. Like, I'm going to take back the reins on my plan. And I think God was going to save me from myself in that moment. And so he came in and God introduced me to Brett. And so we immediately connected, and it was just one of those moments where I went in with my like, I'm gonna lay all my heavy hitter stuff out there, see if I can just scare you away, get you out of here. And he didn't run. Wow. And God, I can see how he was weaving our stories together where Brett was working the night that Zach was killed. He heard the call come out. He didn't respond to it, but he heard it come out. And God is now bringing me back into, he answered my prayer in a very incredible way. And I tell Brett all the time that he is the most radical way that God has revealed himself to me. Wow. Because in a moment where I said, like, Lord, my heart is to be remarried. I'm built for marriage. I want to be married. I want to see my girls that are praying for a daddy every night. I'm like, why isn't God answering my prayer for a daddy? I want that to be answered. I want them to have an intentional, loving father to play with them and pray with them and to play soccer and to teach them how to do all the things that I can't do. Like, this isn't what it's meant to be. It's meant to be with a mom and a dad. Yeah. And I wanted that. I didn't know that God would answer that prayer in that way, but I think he did. And I feel like in many ways God was like, yeah, I heard that. I heard that prayer. Let's see how that goes. But I'm ecstatic. And it's been something where God has brought us together in ministry too. As before he had even met me, he was beginning to start a Bible study for firefighters. And I had always said, like, Lord, I want to do ministry with someone. I don't want to be on my own accord, doing my thing. I want to be partnered with someone ministering to this. I can't imagine ministering to these first responders and then having a husband being like, you go do your thing. I want to do it with someone. And so God just over and over again affirmed me through things that Brett would say that he didn't even realize he was saying. That just affirmed me that, like, God has answered these prayers over and over again. Wow. And so be careful what you pray for because he can answer. And I think also, like, God is radical. He is a radical God, and he has his perfect timing and his perfect way. And so where I thought I'd be making a decision for the foundation in May of 2021, I'm actually getting married in May of 2021. And I am so excited.
Doubling down on the foundation.
Yes, doubling down
in ministry.
If anything, it was
with this new partner.
Yes,
in
God
life.
was like, let's do this. Wow. Like, I have a purpose and a plan for you. and we're just getting
That's
started.
Right. That's right.
We're
And
just
that's the
getting
truth. He is just getting started in your life.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super excited about your guys' ministry, just the fact that you have a ministry partner, that you guys get to be excited about what God's called you to do. I think about all those people that you're serving. And I mean, when you're going through your story of every time your husband, Zach, would leave and you just had so much faith and you could rest on that faith and that hope. But I feel like so many first responder wives don't have the faith that we have and can't rely on that. And I see a lot of them anxious and worrying all the time, can't sleep. Like, what are the things that you would say to those people that are listening right now, like to have that hope and to rest on that?
Yes. What at the very beginning of each semester that we start, we have a fall semester and a spring semester. And when we were able to gather in person in a large group, I'd have 35 women sitting at round tables, all from different agencies, fire, law enforcement, EMS, federal. And I would tell them, like, some of these women could be some of your very best friends, and you can find people that can say me too. There's so much power in being able to say me too.
Yes.
But that right here and now is where you have to make a choice. Where does your identity lie? Does your identity lie as a daughter of the King, or does it lie in your husband's badge?
Wow.
Because if it lies in your husband's badge, you will be disappointed every single day.
Yeah.
And so if you are depending on your husband and his career to be your God and to fill you, to make you feel worthy, to make you feel loved and sustained, it will disappoint you and it will fail. Wow. But if you place your identity in Jesus Christ, and you recognize who he is, and you run to him for all of your needs, and allow your husband's job and his career to be a part of your story. It's a part of your life. It impacts you daily. It's a part of your family. Like me, it could radically change the rest of your life. But if your trust is in Jesus first, then you will understand it's not the job that could kill him. It's Jesus's plan overarching for your life. Like, do you trust the Lord with your husband? And so when I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to first responder wives that, like, how do you do it? How did you do it? How did you go to sleep every night? I'm like, you have to make the Lord your savior. Is he your savior, or is your husband's badge your savior? I think that's the first thing. You have to get the priorities lined up, and it's so easy to carry that badge, because this is not just a job for these first responders. This is a lifestyle. It's a livelihood. It's a calling. It's who they are. It's ingrained in him.
They say bleed blue.
Yes, absolutely. I said it at Zach's funeral. I said I will forever, like, he bled blue, and so I did too. And that is, I absolutely see it. This is not something that you can just, like, toss it on the table and walk away from. You don't just clock in and clock out. It changes every facet of who you are and how you think and how you respond. You don't sit at a restaurant off duty with your family and not think about exit strategies and watch who's coming in.
Whose hand is in what pocket.
Exactly. And as a first responder wife, you're trained that way too, because you see your husband doing that. So you get used to them unbuckling their seatbelt before they get to their home. You get used to them always wanting to sit, not with their back to the door, but facing the door. You get used to a code word potentially, where it's like, if they see someone that they've arrested that could be a possible threat, that they don't want to see what their wife or their children look like, they'll have a code word. Watermelon. That means take the kids back to the car. Now, don't ask questions. You drop everything and you go. That's normal everyday life for a first responder wife, especially for law enforcement. You get used to hearing the Kevlar come off in the middle of the night. You get used to a call out. I mean, I was used to the law enforcement aspect, and so now I'm learning the firefighter aspect of this. Like, God is he's so cool.
He has
all of the facets of it. That's right.
Definitely a sense of humor.
And I said requalify. He's certainly
he is definitely
requalifying
doing
me.
that, so you can better minister to other people.
Yeah.
Wow. Gracie, what an incredible testimony and an unbelievable story of what God is doing in you and what he's doing through you. And we're proud of you. We're thrilled
Thank you.
To see what your life is going to speak of as you continue to walk into this next season. I think I recall you telling me something significant that we've left out here, and I might be wrong, but there was you had this dream. You had that dream back of the two guys that came to you There's something significant about that dream,
There
right?
There is.
Tell me about that.
That dream that I had of being in the hospital hallway and having two officers approach me in uniform saying, "Zach's gone." One of those two officers did have significance, in that one of those, a state trooper, was one of Zach's best friends, and he would speak at Zach's funeral. And then it would be the other deputy in uniform with the sheriff's office that Zach was ultimately killed while he was working with the sheriff's office. That deputy would be one that would take out the killer. And that he would step over Zach's body to go take out the killer. And that there was significance in this, that like God is so kind. Like he prepared me in ways that I didn't know I needed to be prepared for. And at the time I was a little confused. Like, why would you give me these dreams? Why would you prepare me in such a way? Like, is this some sick joke that you would do this? Like, but no, like it is his grace that I could look back and be like, you were there then. You were there then preparing me for when the bomb would drop. I'd go, there you were, God.
He was in the details.
He was in the details. And so it didn't surprise me when I was sitting on the couch on December 31st after seeing Zach's body and driving it to the coroner's office in the very long parade that was, all over the news with hundreds of police cars stopping the freeway for us to take him to the coroner's office, sitting on the couch and going, wait, what about Zach's friend at the sheriff's office? And this was the one that was in my dream. Like, does he know? I'm like, I'm sure everyone was like, well, of course everyone knows at this point. But I was like, no, like, does he know? And they were like, yeah, he knows. But I just like something was like, no, like something. And I asked the chaplain, who was just getting to know at the time, like barely met him, like, but what about him? Like, how's he doing? He was like, Gracie, he was in that apartment. He took down the killer. Wow. And it was just this like,
you're like,
oh,
man,
God, wow.
That God was a part of all of those details. And I think the thread of what I'm seeing here in this entire story is this trust. That God's plan is bigger and better than all of our plans. And here he is preparing you in these moments when it doesn't even make any sense, but he's able to prepare you in these moments because he's already been there in the future.
Yes.
He's outside of time.
Yes.
He's already been there in the future. He knows what's going to happen. He knows how he's going to walk you through it. And so what that can tell us is that now in the present day where we're at, where we can't see the future, we have no idea what's coming forward, what's going to come into our lives.
Which can be terrifying.
It can
in
be
this current day and
absolutely
age.
terrifying. And it can cause a lot of anxiety. But to rest and know that God's already been there. And he's got our best interest in mind. And when we can rest in those things, we can know that the future is bright, no matter what it looks like.
He has tomorrow.
That's
He's
right.
holding it in his hands. He knows where I'll be 10 years from now. He knows when I'll die. He knows when my future husband, a firefighter, will die.
Wow.
He knows it. He's got it, and I can trust him. He is holding it all together. And I don't just trust him because he's going to hold me through the pain and he's going to help my heart and carry me to eternity, but I can trust him because his plan is good. Like his plan is good, and it's not about me. It's truly about him and his glory, and that he cares so much for me, and he loves me so much. I'm not a sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, that's right.
His love is everlasting for me, and he'll carry me through it, and his purposes will prevail.
It's awesome.
And I can lean into that. And I can joyfully walk with him, trusting that he's got it. Not with my head down, not with a bunch of like, oh God, like, please, what's happening next? What's around the corner? But like, I can run with the Lord. Like, let's do this. What do you got? And I know there's going to be more sorrow. Anyone who's walked through pain, you kind of realize like, it's not a one-fit-all kind of checkbox. There's multiple seasons of sorrow and suffering, and they come in different waves and different time periods. And but when you've walked through the deepest, darkest pain you've ever imagined with the Lord, you're like, all right, I can do it.
If
I
he's
can
taken
trust
me
you.
through this, he'll take me through anything.
I can trust you.
Gracie, thank you so much for spending time with us, sharing so vulnerably.
Thank you for having
with
me.
your story and what you're doing. I want people to be able to get connected to the foundation, get connected to what you're doing, especially first responder wives who may be listening to this right now. How can we get connected?
Yeah, you can check us out at www.theshelterfoundation.org. That's theshelterfoundation.org. You can check us out on Instagram at The Shelter Foundation. You can check me out, Gracie.Parrish. And you can check us out on Facebook too, The Shelter Foundation. And we offer Bible studies nationwide at this point. I mean,
awesome.
In many ways, COVID did that.
Yep.
God was able to take something pretty awful and turn it for his good. And so we have currently different versions of Bible studies, like in person here local if you're in Denver. And then we also have an online that we have women from South Carolina, California, Chicago joining us and logging in and being able to virtually meet with women from around the nation that can say, me too. And we dig into God's word. We do Bible studies together. It's not meant to be this like support group. Let's just bash everything. This is like, let's dig into who God is, he is my creator. This is where my identity lies.
Wow.
That is my kind of my chant. I will over and over again until the day I die, that it is all about Jesus. It is not about the badge. The badge is important and it's a part of the lifestyle. It's a part of what makes you and your family who you are. And we can say, I get it. Me too. But let's also take that perspective, that lens of like what you're talking about, Kristi, and like, let's take it from who is God in the middle of this and how can we trust him in this lifestyle, in this season that can be really hard, and not just survive, but can you thrive as a first responder family? And I believe you can. I believe that you can have a thriving, beautiful marriage. I believe that you can have a beautiful family. I believe that you can have beautiful friendships. I believe that you can have an incredible relationship with your Creator. It's all about where you put your focus, your perspective, and your energy.
Well, it's very clear why God called you into this. It's amazing. It's just,
sometimes I don't know why, but here we are.
It flows from you, and you glow with it, and it's awesome. So thank you for what you're doing, and thanks for spending time with us today.
So good.